Like everything else, the world of bodyguarding is split between the real and the phony. Phony bodyguards are just glorified drivers, big men in suits chosen for their size and shape and appearance, not paid very much, not very useful when push comes to shove. Real bodyguards are technicians, thinkers, trained men with experience. They can be small, as long as they can think and endure, as long as they can be useful when the time comes. I'm a real bodyguard. Or at least, I was. I was trained in one of those secret army regiments where close personal protection is part of the curriculum. I plied that trade among many others for a long time, all over the world. I am a medium-sized man, lean, fast, full of stamina. Not quite a marathon runner, but nothing like a weightlifter. I left the Army after 15 years of service and took jobs through an agency run by a friend. Most of the work was in South or Central America. Most of the engagements were short. I got into it right when the business was going crazy. Kidnapping for ransom was becoming a national sport in most of the South American nations. If you were rich or politically connected, you were automatically a target. I worked for British and American corporate clients. They had managers and executives in places like Panama and Brazil and Colombia. Those people were considered infinitely rich and infinitely connected. Rich because their employers were likely to bail them out, and those corporations were capitalized in the hundreds of billions. Connected because ultimately the Western governments would get involved. There was no greater sense of connection than a bad guy knowing he could sit in a jungle clearing somewhere and be heard in 10 Downing Street or the White House. But I never lost a client. I was a good technician, and I had good clients. All of them knew the stakes. They worked with me. They were biddable and obedient. They wanted to do their 2 years in the heat and get back alive to their head offices and their promotions. They kept their heads down, didn't go out at night, didn't really go anywhere except their offices and their job sites. All transport was at high speed in protected vehicles by varied routes and at unpredictable times. My clients never complained because they were working. They tended to accept a rough equivalent of military discipline. It was all relatively easy for a while. Then I went private. The money was better. The work was worse. I learned to stay away from people who wanted a bodyguard purely as a status symbol. There were plenty of those. They made me miserable because ultimately there wasn't much for me to do. Too many times I ended up running errands while my skills eroded. I learned to stay away from people who weren't in genuine need, too. London is a dangerous town and New York is worse, but nobody truly needs a bodyguard in either place. Again, not much to do. Boring and corrosive. I freely admit that my own risk addiction drove my decisions, including my decision to work for Anna. I'm still not allowed to mention her second name. It was in my contract, and my contract binds me until I die. I heard about the opening through a friend of a friend. I was flown to Paris for the interview. Anna turned out to be 22 years old, unbelievably pretty, dark, slender, mysterious. For a surprise, she conducted the interview herself. Mostly in a situation like that, the father handles things. Like hiring a bodyguard is the same kind of undertaking as buying a Mercedes convertible for a birthday present, or arranging writing lessons. But Anna was different. She was rich in her own right. She had an inheritance from a separate branch of the family. I think she was actually richer than our old man, who was plenty rich to start with. The mother was rich too, separate money again. They were Brazilian. The father was a businessman and a politician. The mother was a local TV star. It was a triple whammy. Oceans of cash. Connections. Brazil. I should have walked away. but I didn't.